The Minnesota Vikings season opener is just a few days away as it inches closer and closer and closer. Reminds me of Shredder in Ninja Turtles 2. It's the secret of the ooze. A little closer. A little closer. A little closer. As he's trying to kill the Ninja Turtles on the spikes. And then here comes Shredder out of nowhere with the bow and arrow, and he knocks the net down. And the Ninja Turtles turn towards the Shredder. And they say, that's right, we carry insurance. One of the greatest movies of all time, if you enjoy 90s movies. So I suggest you go watch that right now. But the Minnesota Vikings season is inching closer, and I don't think there's insurance. The season is happening. Shredder ain't stopping this. Neither is, who's the master? Master Splinter. He's not stopping that either. And the conversations are getting interesting because now we're seeing the articles, the videos, who's going to have the best week one with his new team. What's the biggest concern for the Minnesota Vikings as they enter the season and as they enter a difficult schedule to start the season? Is week one a must-win game for the Minnesota Vikings on the road versus a New York Giants team? And it's a very winnable opponent on the road, and then you face the 49ers. So all these questions are already surfacing and circling. And the NFL Network posed this question, and Kurt Warner had an interesting answer on which player will have the best debut with his new team.
And, Rich, I'm going to take one of those guys on the list, and it's a guy that I always like great stories. This guy was drafted in New York. He's going back to New York with a different team, but I love his supporting cast, this being Sam Darnold, his supporting cast in Minnesota. Coach O'Connell, first and foremost, but Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. You got Aaron Jones in the backfield. So best weapons that he's had around him. I believe he goes into New York and has a great performance in week one. Mooch.
Nice throw. Nice catch.
I still got that.
How about this?
Now, it makes sense that Kurt Warner, a former Hall of Fame quarterback, would select another quarterback because that's the position he analyzes the most. But the fact that he selected Sam Darnold, now I don't know how many quarterbacks are on different rosters this year. Really, Sam Darnold's probably the only viable option to select in this situation. I mean, you look at the best teams around the league, and they're all bringing back the same quarterback. So it makes sense that Sam Darnold would be the guy coming from a quarterback himself. But it does continue ad nauseum. You hear it every single day, from myself included, about the weapons that Sam Darnold has in Minnesota, about the situation that Sam Darnold has in Minnesota, the best situation he's ever been in his entire career, the culture, the coach, the wide receiver, the defense, the offensive line. This is everything that Sam Darnold could ever dream of at this point in his career, because after his first few stops in the NFL, there's no guarantee that this would ever happen again for Sam Darnold. And this is really his last chance to prove that he belongs as a starting quarterback in the NFL. Plus, there's no pressure with J.J. McCarthy behind him because, you know that the moment he throws 2 interceptions, cost the Minnesota Vikings a game, has a fumble, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. The fans, the organization, there's going to be so much pressure to put J.J. McCarthy in the game, especially after his preseason week one performance against the Las Vegas Raiders. It really is a do or die season for Sam Darnold. And for the Minnesota Vikings in this situation, I don't think that putting Nick Mullins in the game or putting Brett Rippon in the game is even an option. If Sam Darnold goes out there and throws 3 picks a game, it's do or die with Sam Darnold. If he goes out there and throws 3 touchdowns a game, well, obviously he's going to stay in the game. But the question that's being asked is, will the Minnesota Vikings replace Sam Darnold with a backup quarterback if Sam Darnold struggles early to start the season? And the answer is no. Darnold gives you the best chance to win going to any given game, even if he's struggling prior to that game. Alec Lewis and the NFL at The Athletic wrote an article, and I think every single beat reporter for every single NFL team wrote an article. And the question was, what is the biggest concern heading into the 2024 NFL season? And Alec Lewis had this to write, and I'll share the screen with you. It says, 39 NFL QBs have thrown at least 1,000 passes in the last 5 years. Sam Darnold ranks last among them in passer rating and EPA per dropback. How much of this was a byproduct of his environment? Talk to people in New York and Carolina, and you'll hear stories that make you wonder how many QBs spent their first 5 NFL seasons in worse situations. Only Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick have amassed a higher interception per attempt rate than Darnold among starters since 2018. Darnold has fumbled 38 times in 56 games. The 2023 Vikings season was clouded by QB turnovers. If the bug bites them again, it'll be tough sledding against a difficult schedule. Yesterday I talked about the recipe for the Minnesota Vikings success this season. And I said, turnovers. Can't turn the ball over like they did last year. They need to keep the ball in their hands and be efficient and effective this season more than any other season because Sam Darnold is their quarterback and the margin for error is so slim this year. When Sam Darnold's your quarterback, there is no margin for error. You need to play the cleanest football you've ever played. And that's not a shot at Sam Darnold, but he's not an elite quarterback in this league. He's not a guy that can overcome errors like a Mahomes or Josh Allen can. Well, Kevin O'Connell went on 9 to Tune with Paul Allen a few hours later after the podcast dropped and said the exact same thing. So, if you want to know what Kevin O'Connell is thinking, just listen to the Minnesota Tim podcast. I'm telling you. Yeah, that's right. In your face. But, earlier this offseason, I compared Sam Darnold to a Ryan Fitzpatrick, a guy that got so hot at moments and earned a big contract extension and then would throw passes that make you roll your eyes and wonder how he even got hot in the first place. And I think he has a little Ryan Fitzpatrick in him. Now, the question is going to be, will the Minnesota Vikings coaching staff allow Sam Darnold to be a Ryan Fitzpatrick? Because Ryan Fitzpatrick's kind of a gunslinger, just kind of let it loose, cut it loose, and then he got hot, and then he was cold, he was back and forth. He's like an icy hot pad. Sam Darnold cannot afford to be cold. He just needs to be hot, especially at the start of the season. Because then people's eyes are going to turn and wonder, hey, should we sign this guy in the offseason? But he is the biggest concern for the Minnesota Vikings because this is his last stop and this is his last chance. And he needs to put together a performance to keep his NFL starting quarterback career alive. And he knows the situation that he's entering this year. He understands that this is the best situation he's ever been in, the best environment, the best coaches, the best wide receivers. And he needs to put together performances. He needs to be efficient and effective. And if he's not, well, he can kiss any potential starting quarterback spots. He can kiss those goodbye because he's got no chance. But the Minnesota Vikings season, it's Wednesday this morning, and they start on Sunday at noon. I did see the other day that the Minnesota Vikings only have one 3 o'clock start this year. That's a testament to the Minnesota Vikings not being an interesting NFL team this year, but it's also a good thing because there's nothing like a 12 o'clock start on a Sunday morning following church. So all good things for the Minnesota Vikings. We'll see what happens this season. A preview pod will come later this week, and Jake's Takes tomorrow morning, Thursday. We will go game by game and break down the Minnesota Vikings win and loss record. Favorable, formidable, and 50-50. That's coming your way tomorrow. Hit subscribe on the pod right there. And thank you for making this podcast a part of your day.